welcome back to Taste for Adventure. Tonight we're talking about homebrewing brown ales.
That's right, yeah. I have 2 brown ales on tap, 2 different styles, so sort of a dueling tap. Thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about homebrewing brown ales on the show.
Yeah, specifically, we've got the two styles that they kind of talk about. You've got your American and your English brown. That's
right. Yeah, so when brewing, certain styles actually have different categories in the BJCP. So you have an American IPA, you have a British IPA. There's an American blonde ale, and there's a Belgian blonde ale. And then that also falls in line with brown ales. So you have American brown ales and British brown ales. So I figure we could try a couple and then maybe talk through the differences.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm actually, this is exciting to get into the homebrew aspect of the show here.
Definitely, yeah, and check the description of the video, and also a little bit later I will get into the recipes if you'd like to see exactly what's in our glass tonight, and maybe even brew a clone of one of my brown ales at home.
Very nice. Well, let's I think we can tap in, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
So first up, we're talking about your English brown. This one's known as Redcoat.
Yeah, so since I have dueling taps, I really designed both recipes to be, I wanted the British brown ale to be as British of a brown ale as possible. I went so far as to even only order imported ingredients, because I wanted to see how different I can push these two styles apart to really understand the differences and the nuances between the two styles. So since it's a dueling tap, the British one is called Redcoat and the American one is called Minuteman. So yeah.
Little side note, we are not recording this anywhere near 4th of July.
That's true. But, you can always, go back and find this.
Enjoy brown. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the nice thing about brown ales is, they're a fairly malt-forward beer, but they're not, like, a real heavy, like, intense beer. These would be good definitely in the summer, on the chillier days or in the evenings for sure.
Yeah.
Also, brown ales, I find, go really, really well with barbecue.
Okay.
Yeah, especially like the darker meats and things like that.
Oh yeah, get yourself some sausage, a burger on the grill there. That sounds great.
Definitely. So, what's your thought about my brown ale?
I like it. It's nice and like roasty, malty. It's got a pretty good mouthfeel to it. I hesitate to call it like thin, because thin kind of sounds like an insult, but it's not really an insult, right? I mean, some beers some beers actually belong a little bit thinner, correct?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they see a darker beer, they expect it to be really heavy or nitro-y or real creamy, where a brown ale doesn't have to be very creamy, and it can be kind of lighter to medium bodied. So it can kind of throw people off, because you might expect it to be a little bit more viscous, like a stout or a porter, but then it is a little bit like thinner.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think that contributes to its like year-round drinkability, though, because it is so light.
Absolutely. But it's malty in a way, kind of a lighter body, like you might find like in an IPA or a wheat. However, it's definitely more on the malt side. I can definitely tell that for sure. There's a little bit of sweetness in there too.
Definitely, and that's probably maybe the major difference between the British brown ale versus the American is that the British brown ale is going to be it's going to use a lot more caramel malts. It's going to be more like caramel and toffee forward flavors.
Yeah, I get that.
You've probably heard of a nut brown ale. A lot of browns, the malts they use contribute like a nuttiness to it. So both Americans and brown ales can have a degree of nuttiness, degree of roastiness, and chocolate, but it shouldn't go as far as being like really coffee-like or overly roasted. And a British brown ale is going to be a lot more caramely, and it's going to finish a lot sweeter and less hoppy.
Gotcha. Just looking at kind of trying to check all the boxes. Nice aroma. It's got like a very distinctive brown, more in the red spectrum of brown, if that makes any sense.
If you were to brew and enter a brown ale in a homebrewing competition, you always have to declare the style that you're entering it in.
Yeah.
And it's really important to make sure that you understand the beer that you brewed and the style that you're entering it in. Mm-hmm. If I was to enter this British brown ale as an American brown ale,
yeah,
it wouldn't get scored terribly because there's not a lot of like flaws, but the judges, they have to judge what it was entered as.
Right.
So, a comment could come back, it's too sweet for an American ale. Maybe you should enter it in the British next time and you would score higher. So a really skilled judge that understands a beer might be miscategorized will write helpful comments like that.
Okay, well, that's nice.
Yeah, but if you want to score really well in a competition, it's really important to really understand, hey, maybe even if you just kind of made like a general brown ale, enter it in both categories and see where it does better and let the judges tell you.
Are you allowed to enter it in multiple categories?
Yes. In most competitions, you can enter beers in multiple different categories. You're usually just not allowed to enter multiple beers in the same category.
Oh, okay.
So I couldn't enter both of these into the British brown ale category, but I could enter both of these in their own categories in the same competition most of the time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a real heartbreaker to accidentally miscategorize a beer.
It sucks getting your score sheets back and then you find out that you miscategorized it. And what it sucks as a judge too if you have a great beer in front of you,
but you have to give it a mediocre score because it's not the style.
Well, and browns, I think there is a lot of overlap there, but sometimes the larger competitions, especially if somebody's entering a whole lot, sometimes people just mess up and they might label their IPA as a stout. And, if you have a whole bunch of IPAs, you could have the best stout in the world, and you have to ding it, and it will never get a high score or an award. Because
this is an excellent beer, but this is the worst IPA I've ever had.
Right. Yeah, so just a couple of tricks about really kind of trying to understanding the guidelines when entering competitions and making sure that, you double check. Taste your beer along with the guidelines before you enter. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Good advice, I would say, for any aspiring homebrew contest entrant.
Yeah. So I can give the recipe for this.
Let's talk about your process because I've brewed a couple of times with you. Not this particular recipe.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up Beersmith here, which is the software that I use, as I think most people use to build the recipes. There's a few others too. Brewer's Friend is a good one, and usually you can build 5 or so free recipes on it.
Okay.
Beersmith might have a free trial, so I'm going to pull up Redcoat British Brown. This is actually a really simple recipe. It's not a very complex malt bill, doesn't have a lot of hops in it. Okay, so for the grain bill, I had 6 ounces of crisp chocolate malt. I had 8 ounces of special roast. And then I had a pound of Baird's British Caramalt, which is a 55 Lovibond crystal malt. And then 8 pounds of British Maris Otter malt as my base grain. And that's it for the grist. As far as hops, I did 1 ounce of UK Challenger hops. They were 7.5 alpha acids. That was just a single bittering addition for a 60-minute boil. And I fermented with Wyeast London Ale Yeast 1028. I fermented it a little bit under 70 degrees for about 2 weeks. Raised it at the end a little bit to make sure I had a nice diacetyl rest because I didn't want any buttery flavors. And then I cold crashed for a couple of days to get that nice clear color.
Nice.
So that's it. Really a lot of what went into my recipe selection was finding those malts that were caramely but not overly sweet, but then also weren't too roasty. So that's why I went for a lot of like the mid Lovibond caramel malts for this beer.
Gotcha. But also the ones that were authentically British.
That's right. So. Yeah, and I might not normally have been such a stickler for that, but I think it actually did turn out.
It turned out this is a good beer. This is a great beer.
Thank you. Yeah. And you know, I've had some authentic British beers, and it has a lot of those same flavors. So I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out.
I think this was really, really super. Have you done browns before? Have you done different browns before this one and the other?
I have not brewed these exact recipes before, but I like browns. I like brewing and drinking a lot of English beers. Yeah. So I have an ESB that I do. Right. I actually won first place at the Indiana State Fair for a British dark mild, which is like a brown ale, but it's only like 3.5% alcohol. Ooh. So it's kind of like the baby brother of something like this.
Okay.
Yeah. So for this one, I really wanted to be super authentically British, and then also really push those caramel malts to really contrast against what's on this tap. So
right.
Yeah.
And what we have on here, we've got your counterpart to your Redcoat.
That's right. That's right.
We've got a Minuteman.
Yep, and that is my that's my American brown ale, which should be a lot roastier and a bit hoppier, both in flavor, aroma, and in bitterness. Now you don't want it to be an IPA level of hoppy, but it should be less sweet and more bitter than its British counterpart.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sure we could tap into that next.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we've got your Minuteman.
Yep.
Your American Brown Ale. Actually, from here, it's appearing quite a bit darker.
Yes, this one is a bit darker. For both styles, they actually have a pretty good range. Okay. From kind of a medium brown to an almost black. And because I was trying to contrast them so much, I intentionally made the British one a little bit lighter and went darker with the American just to help push the differences.
Gotcha. I kind of took that first sip there. Definitely very little to no sweetness on this one. You can definitely taste the hoppiness in there. But you're right. It's not like IPA levels of it, you know. The IBUs aren't going to be through the roof, you know. This isn't going to be 150 or something like this. This is probably what, 30, 45 maybe?
Something, let me see here. IBUs, actually, yeah, right at 30.
Okay.
IBUs, and really there's a lot more kind of in the aroma and the flavor.
Yeah.
Without a lot of that harsh bittering. I was worried about it being too bitter. With the darkness came also a lot of roast grains. And sometimes if you use a lot of hops and a lot of roast grains, it can come off very, very harsh and like kind of an intense bitterness that you don't want.
No, right. No, but this is significantly roastier. It tastes a bit darker, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. And so for the grain bill on this, how I achieved that difference was I used, so again, it was about 75% efficiency, batch size, 5.5 gallons. I did 8 ounces of brown malt, which is 65 as opposed to, you know, the British ones that had a little bit lower color rating. I did 8 ounces of Crystal 40, 8 ounces of chocolate malt, and that's a 350 SRM color contribution. So that's going to be like your really like dark, darkening.
Absolutely.
And then I did a pound of what's called coffee kiln malt, which was a malt that I stumbled across that sounded like it would work out really well.
Yeah.
And then the base on that was just 9 pounds of American 2-row base malt.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So a little bit simpler of a base malt, and then a little bit roastier on the character malts for this one.
Ingredients probably a little bit easier to find too, and you don't have to import them.
Yeah, well, thankfully, a lot of the local homebrew shops, as well as a lot of the big homebrew distributors, do carry some imported ingredients. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to my super local homebrew shop, which I always like to go to first.
Right.
Shout out to Jeremy at Brew and Blooms. I always get my base grain from Jeremy, and a lot of other things as well. But yeah, for some of the imported stuff, you have to go and extend out a little bit.
Fair enough.
But I was happy I did it for the British, and I think it really shows a lot of the difference between the imported ingredients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, these are two very distinctive beers. I mean, maybe the style isn't what you would call distinctive, just being American versus English brown, but these are two very distinctive beers. You know, if you had these side by side as we did, you're going to be able to taste the difference.
Yeah.
You know, it might be, some people would be like, oh, this isn't even the same style. It's like, well, I mean, technically
it's not.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you said this is a bit hoppier of a beer, and I can definitely taste that. What hops did you use exactly?
Yes, I used some very traditional American hops. I used a bit of Chinook and Simcoe, and those are kind of traditional West Coast American hops. Okay. Very old world. They're not the super like tropical, citrusy, more modern American hops. Yeah. They're going to contribute more of like piney type flavors.
Yeah, I could definitely taste. I can taste it more piney. I mean, it's not going to be like a dank or like vegetal or anything like that. But definitely kind of earthy, kind of piney.
Yep,
it's a very earthy beer in general.
Yeah, I thought that would work pretty well with it. And really, you can use, if you read the guidelines for the American Brown Ale, they allow for a really wide expression of hops in the American style, just because American craft beers tend to really be expressive for hops. But for this one, I wanted to go pretty traditional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. We're getting kind of to the end here. I'm noticing the color. It's definitely got kind of that more that ruby kind of red in the brown, but this feels darker.
Yes, yeah, it does. And yeah, you can see the clarity and the color when it gets really low there in the glass, or if you shine like a light through it. So then you can see that it's, once it gets low like that, then you can see that it's different from like a stout. It's gonna be almost pitch black.
Yeah, I think two all around really great beers.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I put a ton of time and effort into these two, because these are actually also my selections for this year's National Homebrew competition. So wanted to be like super, super traditional and brew them really, really well. Yeah. So did a lot of research into both. Plus, it's just really fun to have two kind of dueling beers, especially when they're at their best side by side.
Right, of course. And I mean, you've done a few different ones that are in a kind of a concurrent series before. So this is these are both really nice offerings.
Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed them, and I can give you, like I said, I'll drop the full recipes in the description below. So feel free to brew this yourself and let me know. Let us know how it turned out.
Yeah. Well, I think rounding out this episode, we actually have a commercial example of a brown ale that I kind of brought by, so we can give that one a taste, see how kind of it stacks up against your American brown.
That's great. And, I think, so this is the Shorts Bel Air Brown.
That's right.
Right? And it actually says on the can that it's an American brown. So we can see if it really is or if it's more caramely and British.
Yeah. We are on to the Fresh Prince's favorite beer. Yeah, Bel Air Brown.
Bel Air Brown. That's right.
Yeah. I don't think I'd ever heard of Shorts before I picked this up. This is just something I found randomly at a local liquor store around me.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it over.
Yeah, no worries.
So Bel Air Brown, they say it's an American brown ale. Now this is when you look at it, it's definitely brown. There's no mistaking that this is a brown beer.
Yep.
It's not like really amber. It's definitely not as dark as mine. Or mine were like super dark brown with just little highlights of like red.
But you say that brown's got a pretty wide margin for color.
They do, yeah. The BJCP guidelines really allow for kind of like a medium brown to an almost black.
Okay.
So mine definitely were both kind of on the darker end of the spectrum, but this is really a strikingly like nice brown.
Yeah, very nice brown color, very crystal clear.
It is, yeah.
Detecting a small bit of sweetness.
Yep. It's like it's like peanut brittle, where it has that toffee and like nuttiness to it, but not without the really sharp sweetness.
Right. I had the other 5 of these, but it's just really interesting to contrast them with the 2 others, the homebrewed British and then the homebrewed American, especially when this is calling itself a classic American brown.
Yeah. Well, what's nice about certain styles and about homebrewing is that there's usually a pretty good range of allowable, flavors and what you contribute into the beer. So I pushed the American to kind of the higher end of almost everything because I wanted to push it so far away from British.
Got it.
Where this is more of like probably the middle of the road in the category.
Yeah, this is a very middle of the road, I think, between those 2 styles. Because there's definitely, I think there's a bit more sweetness in this than I would imagine would be probably good for an American brown.
Yeah, I mean, American browns can definitely have some. I think it's because, there's some hoppy bitterness too.
Yeah.
I think it's the lack of roast that's giving it some of that sweet character.
Yeah, if it were roastier, if it were, a little bit darker in flavor, which I feel like it maybe would push itself more towards the American for me.
Yeah. But I think you're right. This really does occupy that nice space between kind of my 2, where the British was very caramely and sweet.
Yep.
American was very roasty and hoppy, and this is kind of nice in between.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not going to rate mine because I think it's tacky to rate my own homebrew. But what did you think? Give us your honest opinion of your summary of the 3 beers and how they stack up with each other.
Well, I really enjoyed yours a lot. And I'm not just saying that because you provide me with free beer.
You bring over
and
your
you
shit
threaten
too.
to take away. You don't threaten to take away your beer. You never have. You've always been very, very generous with the homebrew. I'm not really sure which one I like better. I like the sweetness that comes with the English, but I like the roastiness that comes with the American. I think flintlock pistol to my head. I think I might lean towards the American.
Okay.
I do like a roastier beer. I like a little bit darker of a beer, and so I think that's kind of archetypal for my flavor taste. But it's really neat to be able to contrast that with the English variant.
Mm-hmm.
To definitely have those side by side. This one's pretty good, but it's like once you've had the extreme of both styles, it's pretty much the extreme of both those styles, and for this to be so middle of the road, I kind of am wanting to be like, okay, take a stance, pick a lane, and then just go with it. It's kind of you're driving in the middle of the 2-lane highway situation. It's like, come, just both cars are honking, just come on.
All right.
So.
Well, good.
I think that's kind of where I landed on it. What did you think of this one, just in general?
I actually liked it a lot. I think that I really agree with you on all of the points that you made with this beer. That definitely a lot sweeter, a lot lighter.
Yeah.
But I like the balance that it has. I like that it's a lot of more of the bittering hops, but not a lot of like the flavor and aroma hops.
Right.
So really, the hops are in support of the malt, but it's really a very malty beer.
Yeah.
And it has those sweet flavors without having a terribly sweet finish. So I find it very drinkable.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a bit less creamy than my 2 examples. It had a little bit more of like a carbonic sharpness to it.
Okay.
I think the thickness, the body was about the same, but I found this one just to be just a little bit different, like maybe in the way it's carbonated. I don't know.
Interesting.
So I just found that like difference in mouthfeel to be kind of interesting.
Gotcha. We'll have to get into that on the homebrewing special.
That's right. Yeah, and I'm sure there will be many. So this was kind of a peek into homebrewing a little bit, especially with the recipes that we're sharing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, looking forward to getting into it more.
Yeah.
Do also want to mention that there is one final brown ale category,
Okay.
and it's actually under the historical beers.
All right.
So it's kind of like the Island of Misfits toys in the BJCP guidelines.
Yeah.
There's just like all these different beers. So there's actually a London brown ale also.
Interesting.
I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with that one. I believe that it is supposed to be a lot sweeter, a lot more adjunct heavy, but this is your traditional British brown ale for the BJCP guidelines, not the London. But there is a third if you're interested in dabbling with maybe all three types of brown ales.
If you can find one that kind of exists in modern circulation, a packaged London, let us know what it is, and we'll try to get it.
For sure.
That'd be
for
interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
Sort of do a follow up, find out how your beers did in the competition. Sort of follow up and do another episode on browns.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see how well they do in the nationals. So we should hear back sometime this summer.
Nice.
Maybe. Especially if I do well, I'll be happy to share how they did.
Yeah. Well, here's what you thought of the beers. Here's what the judges thought.
That's right. So, it's nationals is always a good time, and it's always fun to go against, the best beers in the world at the biggest homebrew competition there is. So,
absolutely.
Really put my all into these beers. Hopefully they do well, and if not, I'm happy with it.
You got to brew some beers.
So, got to brew some beers. And this is a fun experiment at home, even if I don't take away any medals or get bad scores. It's it's all fun.
Yeah. Not only that, but your friends liked your beers, so
that's
right. Pretty good.
That's
too.
right. Yeah, you're the only judge I really need. So yeah.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time on Taste for Adventure. Thanks for joining us again, and hope to see you soon.
Good night.
Thought the shorts was kind of a good combination of the both, so I'm gonna see. Let's see. All right, it's still dark.
What are you getting?
I'm getting a mix of both. Still doesn't taste like the shorts.